Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Along Came a Writer Network. Opinions expressed in our shows do not necessarily reflect those of the network. Welcome to the Along Came a Writer Show. I'm your host, Linda Kozar, and today we're going to be chatting with author Mary Hamilton. She's the author of the Rustic Knoll Bible Camp series for middle grade readers and 2 adult suspense novels, including her latest release, Dead Air, a Waco mystery. Mary had the unique experience of growing up at a youth camp where her family lived year-round for 20 years. Those childhood memories served as an inspiration for her Rustic Knoll books. Even in her adult books, she draws stories from real-life situations and writes about characters who struggle with various aspects of faith. She has also written articles for magazines and take-home papers, as well as a Christmas-themed play. When not writing, she can usually be found walking her dog, but she also enjoys Sudoku puzzles, reading, knitting, and quiet evenings at home in Texas with her husband. They have 3 grown children and 2 adorable grandsons. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you, Linda. It's my honor to be here with you.
I know it's so odd when someone reads your bio and you're like, ooh, is that me?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
it's just, I know it's so funny, but we all have our bio, and it's good. You have a really good one.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about your latest book today, Dead Air, a Waco mystery. I'm just going to read a little blurb, and then we'll talk about it. So
okay.
Kit Squires never imagined her husband capable of murder. Then gunshots blast across the airwaves of his former radio show, and moments later his voice breaks the air. Torn between believing the evidence or the character of the man she thought she knew, Kit's choice puts her at odds with their son Bryce. One of them has to be wrong, which means the killer might still be there. Okay. It's the drama. I can't help it. I know it's stuck in that. There was a problem. I'm stuck on it. So let's talk about that mystery. You made the transition between writing young adult mysteries and moving on to adult. What's the difference, first of all?
Well, the middle grade ones were not mysteries. They were just, I would probably call them action adventure.
Okay. And wasn't there an element, I remember, I thought there was an element of mystery in those, too. I recall.
No, not really. I don't think so, other than just what the characters were dealing with, what they were going through.
I know. I guess I have a habit of seeing mystery in everything. But so tell us about the series. Is there going to be a third book in the series? Because you have Dead Air, Waco Mystery, and then before that you have Pendant. So is there going to be a third, or is it 2 in the series?
For now, it's 2. I'm debating whether I want to stay with mysteries or not. When you're writing in a certain genre, you need to read as much as you possibly can in that genre. And yes. I find that if I read too many mysteries and suspense and thrillers, I get paranoid when I go outside because my mind is just in that frame, and I don't like being there. So
usually the news or social media does that to me. I'm
yeah,
paranoid every
that
time.
too.
Yeah. It
Plus,
can
my
really mess
husband
with your
is.
mind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plus, my husband has a hard time with me writing about murder and things like that. He calls himself a 70s hippie. So he's peace, love, and joy and all that kind of stuff. So
I get it.
So he doesn't particularly like hearing about murder mysteries.
For now, for today, we'll concentrate on on these mysteries.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us about Dead Air. How'd you get the idea to write this one?
The idea actually was inspired by the Las Vegas mass shooting years ago. Of course, we've learned a lot about the people that do that kind of thing since then, but at the time it was relatively new phenomena, and I kept thinking about how we give so much sympathy to the victims and their families, which is just the right thing to do, but the families of the shooters are usually stunned that this happened. They may feel all kinds of guilt over not being able to stop it, not knowing, were there signs that they missed that they should have recognized. So I started thinking about, what if there was a person who nobody would have imagined a shooting like that. And so that's what started it.
Yeah, that's a different perspective because if you think about men and women in prison and the families that they leave behind are devastated and wondering how could this child I raised have done this, or did they?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you started from that premise, and was it easy to write, or were times when you're writing it was difficult emotionally?
It was very difficult. I don't know about so much emotionally, but I started out thinking that it would be, just a really good guy that snapped or something. But as I made up the character, I just could not imagine him doing anything like that. It was just too hard to find a good person that would go out and shoot a bunch of people. And so I had to find a different way around it.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea of his wife having the dilemma of, does she believe the evidence or the character of the man she thought she knew? That's where that came in.
Yeah, because if you really feel like the person you've been with for years, like your husband, his character, and you think, how could anyone know this? Because there's no way he would have done it, in the natural. Yeah.
Right.
So, wow, that's really cool. And so, okay, and then the book before that, Pendant, is about a student gone missing.
Correct.
Yeah, for a long period of time.
Right. That was inspired by a tiny little article in the Houston Chronicle that I saw years ago about an elderly woman who showed up at, I think it was an assisted living center, with only her purse and a jacket and her cane. And she was very alert and very pleasant, but she wouldn't tell them any of her background. And so they were trying to figure out where she had come from, why she was there. And that was the initial idea for it. As soon as I read it, I thought, ooh, there's a story there. But I was in the middle of writing the middle grade series, so I had to put it on hold, stick it in my file. And so then it just developed as, a teacher who was trying to find a student, and she decides to hide out in an assisted living facility because someone is trying to kill her.
Oh, wow. So you squirrel away your ideas. Like I write my ideas. I I know I have over 50 notebooks that I just write down ideas or quips or things in, and then or on scraps of paper. And I used to, before I started writing books, I was always I was writing for newspapers or whatever, but I was a frustrated writer, and I would even write on gum wrappers when I was waiting in the car line at school. And, you write your ideas down and think, oh, I'm going to use this someday.
Yep.
Have you used a lot of those ideas, or do you still have a lot left?
I don't have a lot of ideas. I do stick them away. I probably have. Well, there's 2 others right now that I think I would like to write sometime. But thankfully now we have our phones that we can pull out and write notes on, so that we don't have to use gum wrappers. But
of course, I print those out because if God forbid, if anything happens to the notes on my phone,
true.
I'll lose them.
Yes,
so
that's
I
true.
print them out.
That's true.
Just in case. Never trust technology too much.
That's right.
Your books before this, the middle grades, were Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil, and See No Evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that old kitty nursery. Is it a nursery rhyme, or is it just a saying?
I think it's just a saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. One of the things you learn as a child, and so it really resonates.
Right.
It's really good titles because they resonate with everyone. What book on your heart would you like to write but haven't tackled yet?
That's a good question.
Like, is it women's fiction, historical fiction? I mean, I know, you live in Waco, so you read about Waco, and Waco has quite a history.
Yeah. It would probably be women's fiction. That's what I'm debating jumping to from mystery. The idea that I'm currently chewing on, I haven't started writing at all, came from personal experience and as well as friends' experiences where they've lost their parents and have had to clean out the parents' houses or whatever and dispose of their belongings. And I was thinking about it one day, and of course we had to, when we moved from Houston to Waco, we got rid of a lot of stuff and kind of pared things down, but it gradually accumulates again. And I started thinking one day, I thought, all the things that my husband and I treasure aren't going to mean anything to our kids, and they're just going to get rid of them. And so I had this idea for a story where a woman, her mother is maybe a pack rat, and her house is just a mess. And the woman keeps trying to, encourage her mom to clean it up, and her mom says, "Nope. When I'm gone, you can do whatever you want with it, but I have these 5 things that I treasure, and I want you to find someone else that will treasure them and give them to them. You can do whatever you want with everything else, but these 5 things, you need to find someone else that treasures them." So that's what
That's neat.
What I'm concentrating on now.
I was on my way, with my husband. We were going to Washington on the Brazos, and of course I spotted this estate sale on the way, and it was in an old house, and so I was like, oh, we have to go in there. We have to go in. And went in there, and absolutely everything in the house had a tag on it, and it kind of made me sad because I saw these old family photos and everything, and so the family who was selling all this really didn't have any use for the history of their own family. And it's hard to understand that. Because
it really is.
Families can be so rich in history, and no one knows their stories, and that's where we come in as writers, right? We can kind of tell a story based on their lives, or write memoirs about them. But it is sad though, So I think that's a story that'll hit home.
And I can see what your experience was there. I could see us being in the same position because I've lived all of my family has been up in Wisconsin, and so my kids have not. They've occasionally met the other members of the family, the aunts and uncles and things, but it doesn't have any meaning for them. So why would they keep, pictures of people that they don't have any relationship to?
Yeah,
and that is
unless
sad.
they're interested in ancestry and interested in where they came from, and
Right.
and there is a lot more interest these days, But on the other hand, I like to frequent resale shops, and some of the people I know who work there said that they get people's ashes all the time.
Oh, wow.
I mean, people donate family members' ashes, and I
Wow.
just and urns. I just can't understand that. They had like a whole shelf of just urns, and how could anyone be so callous?
Yeah, that's creepy.
Well, it is creepy. I can see a mystery now. Urns in the resale shop, or something like that.
Yeah.
Haunted resale shop.
Yeah, there you go.
So, is there a genre you've never thought you'd ever read in, like speculative fiction, sci-fi, anything like that?
Yeah, I've never really cared much for sci-fi. I've read occasional fantasy, but it's not something I read regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I challenged myself to write a sci-fi story, and I thought, gosh, it would be fun, just to do it, because basically, you look at like Star Trek, that was basically just a revamped Cowboys, Cowboys.
That's true.
Movie.
Yeah.
They just took that, and the same thing with Knights of the Round Table. It's kind of the same stuff, except with different weapons.
Yeah. That is.
So if you can write a good story, you can probably write anything.
I've not thought of it that way, but you're right. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like it, because I've been watching a lot of Westerns with my mom lately, and the storylines it's like surprisingly similar. Yeah. So tell us how you got started with writing.
I've always enjoyed writing. When I was a kid, I used to write long letters to friends and to a favorite cousin. And then when my first year out of college, I worked with a hunger organization, and I was writing their monthly newsletter. And people would come in and say they really enjoyed reading it, and I was like, "It's a newsletter, really?" But some of my coworkers really encouraged me to write for publication. So when my first child was born and I became a stay-at-home mom, then I started writing. Took a couple of correspondence courses at the time, and started writing for Christian magazines. And then a few years later, when we moved from Houston up to Naperville, Illinois, and my church at the time held a women's dinner theater every December, the first weekend in December every year. And one year the fine arts minister, came to me and said, "I understand you like to write." And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "How would you like to write a play?" And I said,
Ooh, nice.
"I've never done that before in my life." And she told me what she wanted. She had been looking for a play to do the next December and hadn't found anything she liked. And so she, I said, "Well, I'll try it, but you better keep looking just in case." And so I wrote that and was surprised that actually I was feeling pretty proud of myself for writing this play.
Well, yeah.
Until I saw it performed. And then I was so humbled. Seeing it performed live was just incredible. I felt like I gave them something in black and white and they made it Technicolor. I gave them a skeleton.
They bring it to life.
They really do.
Yeah.
They really do. They put skin and bone or skin on it and clothes, and it was just very humbling. But I had always wanted to write fiction because I loved reading novels. And I had to give up writing for a while when my youngest quit taking naps because I couldn't find a regular time to write that I wasn't falling asleep. And so once he got into school, then I started back and really focused on fiction. And that's when I started, having grown up at the camp, I knew I wanted to write a story set at a camp. So that was my first
that's a unique
project.
Childhood. That is unique, and you're writing from that perspective. I mean, that's really cool. That must have been an interesting childhood.
It was phenomenal. My brothers and sisters and I realized what a unique experience it is. And my brother one time asked me, "Can you imagine growing up anywhere else?" And my other brother and I looked at each other and said, "No."
What's the wildest thing that ever happened growing up? Just other things, animals. What was it?
I don't know if this is really wild, but it just some of the characters. I mean, I based certain people on the story, conglomerates on people that I knew. We had a cook who put green peppers in everything. And the staff just got so tired of green peppers that when it was her birthday, they made her a green pepper cake.
That's funny.
So, but yeah, there were lots of pranks. One year, the guy counselors found this huge 3-legged bullfrog, and they put it in one of the girl counselors' drawers. So you could hear her scream almost over the whole campus.
Gosh, and it was a mutant frog too.
Yeah. Oh goodness.
What about weather? Did you ever have like a tornado or anything like that, or anything scary?
Before we moved there, they had a tornado that tore the roof off of the dining hall. And then one time when I must have been in high school, I think we had a tornado that went through, but it never actually touched down because I think we had probably 15, 20 trees broken off, and they fell in different directions. So
and it's funny, though, you can hear it. One time a tornado passed over our house, and I could hear it. It sounded like, when those tops we used to have as kids, and you would pump the top of it, and it sounded like a top. And I realized what I was hearing was a tornado overhead that, thank God, didn't touch down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out at my at that time we had an assistant director, and they had a daughter that was my age, so we were best friends. And their house was way out on the other end of campus, and it was out in the middle of a field, an open field. And so I didn't realize how bad the storm was, other than seeing the wind blow the water in underneath the screens, under the windows.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'd never seen that happen before. Yeah. But I didn't realize how many trees were down until after the storm, and I went back home. So.
Yeah, and you're probably like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now, is writing the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, or do you have different dreams of what to do with it, or where you'd like to go? I mean, what else would you like to accomplish?
I would like to get to the point where I can, if it's possible, where I can write a book without so much self-doubt and without having to struggle so much. I still feel like, people ask if you're a plotter or a pantser, and at heart, I'm a plotter. I want to see the map where I'm going, but I can't seem to see that without actually starting to write it, which makes for a lot of stops and starts, and that bothers me. Well,
I can relate to that because I don't write books fast. I take my time, and not like others. Like we have our friends, Janice, she can write fast, but not everybody can do that. I sometimes go back and I wonder about every sentence. I was like, oh, should I write that sentence? Maybe I should write this better. And, so there is that element of doubt. And I try not to compare myself to others because that destroys your confidence. And,
Definitely.
but I think it's okay. I'm sort of both. I'm sort of a pantser and a plotter. About halfway through the book, I become a plotter because I see where I want it to go. My characters have spoken to me because everything's more character driven. And I see where I want to go, and I can plot the rest of the book out. Now, if I'm writing nonfiction, I plot it. But fiction, maybe you're a combination like me.
That sounds very much like what I do.
Yeah, and that's how it works for you, and that's good. I don't think I could ever be, plot out a whole book because the adventure wouldn't be there for me. I like to go along with the characters and discover what I'm going to do next. It's like they're taking me on an adventure.
Yeah.
So, so what's the most gratifying thing about being an author? I mean, that you found so far?
Oh, of course, it's when someone comes up and says they love the book.
Yeah.
That they stayed up until all hours reading it.
Yeah. I mean, it's always nice. And then sometimes there are the other ones, and some of them are just, sometimes people just go out of their way, like I remember getting a 1 star one time, and then underneath that they wrote, haven't read the book.
Oh, gee.
They're like, what is that? Or book arrived damaged, 1 star. And I was like, was that the author's fault?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we all have things
fortunately,
like that.
I haven't had any of those yet.
Well, I hope you never do. So people can find you on Instagram and Facebook. Or at your website, which is Mary Hamilton Books. And there are other Mary Hamiltons out there, surprise, surprise. So you have to look
there
for,
are lots of them.
and even if you put author after your name. But you just got to look for her. Look for her title, and then you'll be able to find her other titles. That's the way to do it.
And
Dead Air.
I normally write under the name Mary L. Hamilton.
I remembered that, but sometimes there are just so many. It's easy just to put in your title or go to Amazon.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah, and then they can find you. But thank you for being on the show today. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we go? I mean, anything what's I think we already talked about what's next. You're still debating that. So we'll just have to hang on and wait until the next one comes. But thanks so much. I enjoyed chatting with you. We were in the same ACFW chapter, Writers on the Storm, and good to talk to another stormer here. And you have
been great talking to you, Linda.
It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.